go. So, we've gone into the numbers in depth, as I recall. We did the first pass at the trumps in depth, as I recall. So today we'll go into the court cards in more depth. Now, the court cards are all about the elements. The elements are so intrinsic to Tarot and to Kabbalah that we'll spend a good bit of time on them and really go at them from many different angles. The first thing to understand about the elements is that they don't actually exist as separate things. They are modes of activity of reality itself. They also never actually exist in isolation. You never encounter pure fire, pure water, pure air, and pure earth as principles. They're always in an admixture or in some degree of complication, which these court cards very specifically indicate.
Are they always all present?
They're always all present, but rarely in perfect equilibrium. Usually one or more of them are into the forefront, you might say, or dominant. So, fire, water, air, and earth. Fire can be considered the first element. The elements exist in the Kabbalah as a hierarchy, and the basic order is fire, water, air, and earth, in that order. And the reason for that is due to the mode of due to the mode of. I can't teach under these conditions. No, I'm joking.
It's just that Blake was expecting a client and I wasn't sure.
The reason for this order is because of the way in which these different modes that are being classified as the elements work together to create what we call experience, what we call reality.
It's not me.
Oh. Sorry. I just stepped on something.
So the reason for this order is the logical relationship of these principles in the creation of reality, which is experience. Reality and experience are one and the same. Fire signifies the prime creative force, the prime creative urge. So it's the first movement of reality to move at all. It's the inception, it's the origination, it's the principle of creation, of the principle of anything at all. So it's origination, it's the prime motive. Water is the principle of this prime movement moving into something. Fire in its nature is just movement. It is just an inception. It doesn't go anywhere or do anything. It just wants to start, and it doesn't have any notion or any sense of what it is starting. Water is the sort of the answering principle that says, okay, here's this inception. Where's it going to go? It's got to go somewhere. It's got to go into something. It's got to go into some kind of expression or whatever. Air is an exploration of the possibilities. So fire is an initial inception of, okay, creativity. Water comes along and says, okay, let's create something. And air comes along and basically says, well, what should we create? I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities here. So air is all about unsettledness. It's about exploring possibilities. It's specifically about not settling on specifics, not coming to conclusions, not coming into focus. It is about possibilities, ambiguity, ambivalence, multiplicity.
Can you move that chair around?
And earth is about resolution, about resolving. So the initial impetus of fire is, okay, creation. Water comes and says, well, let's create something. Let's create as an expression. Air comes and says, well, what should we do? There's all these possibilities. And earth comes and says, let's do this. Earth is all about specificity. It's about bringing things into focus, into specificity, into resolution. So you can see that as a sort of a logical flow, this series of principles moves from original creation into an actual sort of final result through these four extremes. Now you may recall from working with the trumps, we talked about this notion of the abyss. Well, the first four trumps are considered to be above the abyss. They are reflections of reality itself, very purely and directly. And then all the rest of the trumps are below the abyss, and they are embodiments of elaborations of those prime pure principles. Now there happen to be four trumps above the abyss, and those four trumps are the roots of the elements. The fool is the root of the principle of air, possibilities. The magician is the root of the principle of fire, creativity, origination. The priestess is the root of the principle of water, which is otherness, form, receptivity. And the empress is the root of earth, which is fullness of expression. So those four cards signify the actualities which the elements are symbolic of. And you may recall that above the abyss, so to speak, those four cards are not actually four principles, but they are all aspects of one thing. So that's the actual nature of the elements is as aspects of one thing. And then as we move down into the cards, we get elaborations and much more divergence and more moving into specifics. So let's go back and look at the element of fire. Now these to reiterate, there's a lot of reiteration here. We're going back over and over again, this stuff from different angles. Fire, water, air, earth are not fire. What we know, we like to light a match, and water, not you get a glass of water. Air, you breathe, and earth, you knock into something. Those experiences are very roughly and very crudely symbolic of the principles that the elements represent. The elements are principles of action, modes of function, you might say. So fire is, above all, intrinsically creative. It is radiant. It is a shining forth. It is a positing. It is positivity itself.
But can look destructive.
Huh?
But it can look destructive.
In itself, no.
Okay.
No, the pure element of fire can never be destructive. But, because in the element of fire there's nothing to destroy. From other points of view it might seem destructive, but in fire it's not. Fire does not know destruction. The sun does not destroy. It may melt planets and decimate deserts, but it does not destroy. It's not its fault. It shines. Water is, in the same sense that fire is a positivity, a creativity, water is a principle of otherness. Water is receptive. Notions like the screen in a movie theater are appropriate. It receives the light, using the movie theater analogy for its four elements, the light bulb in the projector shines forth, and it would be nothing, you wouldn't even see it if there wasn't a screen. The screen is there, so the screen is an otherness. It's other than the light bulb that allows the light to be seen as something. So that's a pretty good analogy of the element of water. Water is receptive. It is passive. It is embodying. It is desirous. Fire is not desirous. Fire just shines. But water has desire. Water wants to produce. Water wants to give forth. Sexual analogies are very appropriate in the elements. We talked a little bit in a previous class about a family where the fire is the father, water is the mother, air is the son, and the earth is the daughter. And these analogies are appropriate. Fire is the creative version, analogous to males who just want to sow their seed and don't give a shit about families or children or anything. Whereas water is the mother principle. It wants to bring forth life. It wants to receive the fructifying force of the fire and produce something, produce a child, produce a family, produce a society. So water is outwardly directed, outwardly motivated. It wants to be productive. Fire is productive, but it doesn't care. It's just starting the ball rolling. It doesn't care, but it has no discerning results at all. I'm speaking as if these elements were personalized, and that's not literally true, of course, but it's a way of conveying the spirit of the element in sort of poetic terms. The spirit of the principle. Now, air is an exploration of possibilities. Very specifically, air is the opposite of settling on specifics. Air is about diversity, it's about exploration, it's about possibilities, it's about indeterminacy, it's about alternatives, it's about motion, it's about not settling. earth is exactly the opposite of it. It's about settling, it's about specifics, it's about stability, it's about permanence, it's about differentiability, definition, all those kinds of notions. So you'll notice that earth and air are very specifically opposite. Air is specifically about not being specifying, about being open to alternatives and possibilities, and earth, on the contrary, is exactly the opposite. It's about specifying, about coming into very specific, very specified, very concretized expression. Likewise, fire and water are opposites. Fire is positive and creative, water is passive and receptive. Fire is only concerned with inception. Water is not at all concerned with inception, but is concerned with bringing things into form, bringing things into expression of otherness, as otherness, a production of otherness. You could say water is concerned with production. That's a good way to put it. So that's the general principles of the elements in themselves. Any questions or discussion?
Does choice occur? Where does choice occur? Assuming, for instance, air gives all the possibilities.
Choice occurs in earth.
Okay. That's what
Or choice occurs in the transition from air to earth.
And does choice reside in earth?
Yes. Well, the result of choice is earth.
Right.
Choice is a euphemism for a complex gestalt of the transition of choice is not a simple single phenomenon. Choice is having a range of possibilities, and then the act of narrowing those possibilities down to a simple condition and then collapsing into that condition. So it's sort of a multi-stage or multi-step thing. It's not just a single thing, even though we have one word for it. And so choice is the transition from air to earth.
So earth is the result of choice.
Earth is the result. Earth is the answer. Earth is the readout. Earth is the display.
When I was thinking about that, I thought that probably choice would reside in water, because desire is there. But then earth comes after air.
Yeah, water is more primal. It's not that specific.
Okay.
It desires expression, but doesn't desire particular expression.
Okay.
It doesn't even know what the possibilities are. Until it's gone through air, the possibilities haven't been explored.
Yeah, so that means it has to be more with earth, or at
Yes.
least between the two.
Yes.
Something happens there.
Yeah,
It's
that
very
transition.
Does the analogy of the light bulb and the screen follow into air and earth?
Let me think. Sure, light bulb. Fire is a light bulb. Water is the screen. Air is the film, and earth is the movie.
Okay, earth is the final.
Because the film is a bunch of separate frames that are disconnected.
Gotcha.
They have no unity. They have no coherence. They're all the different possible
Right.
snapshots of the movie.
Right, perfect.
So yeah, that analogy works pretty well. And the argument of Kabbalah and the argument of the elements is that these stages of creation, these modes of primal consciousness or energy, are always found in all experience whatsoever. So there's always a creative flash. There's always a receptive medium. There's always a variability of possibilities. There's always an expression as a specific. So you find this in a movie, you'll find this in a dream, you'll find this in life, you'll find this in the production, in the building a bridge, you'll find this in, someone robbing someone else on the street. You'll find anything whatsoever includes this chain of events. This is a primal chain of functionality in reality, is the argument of Kabbalah and of the elements. Traditionally, they put a very great store on this in the Kabbalah. And there's a notion called Tetragrammaton, which is the four-lettered name of God, which is a code for these four principles of creativity. And this was considered so sacred and so secret that you weren't allowed to say the name. If you understood what the name signified and what it was about, you were considered a master Kabbalist because you understood the principles of creation itself.
Thanks. So the operative word would be thing. So these apply in the realm of things. Would this apply?
It applies in any realm. Any reality is a thing for the purposes of this analysis. Anything that is a reality in any sense, this applies to. I mean, that's the argument. That's the philosophy.
And
You
your
can
experience?
investigate it. You can investigate it for yourself
Yeah.
and see if it works for you. Any other general questions on the elements? Okay, so let's look at the cards, the chord cards. Now, of course, there are 16 of them, and they represent the permutations of the elements with regard to each other. The suit of each card, wands, cups, swords, and discs, signifies the element, fire, water, air, earth. And then the personage in each suit, in the case of Crowley's deck, it's the knight, queen, prince, and princess, signifies the sub-element within the primal element. Now, in terms of the chord cards, the number one thing to understand is that suit dominates. Wands cards are about fire, period. The fact that they have sub-elements is just like an element of spicing, an element of flavor. So if you wanted to have a very coarse, heavy-handed interpretation of the cards, if anytime you saw a Wands chord card, you just said fire, that would be fine. Because the particularities of the sub-element is not the dominant characteristic. So the Wand chord cards are all about fire. They're all about creativity. They're all about the generative force. They're all about shining forth. Likewise, all the cup cards are all about moving into form, all about expression as otherness, all about the sort of the mode of desire and yearning that is intrinsic in the flavor of that quality. Likewise, all the swords cards are about air. They are about exploration of possibilities. They are about expansion, moving into otherness, moving into possibility, and vehemently not being contained, being trapped, being stuck. And all the discs cards in Crowley's decks are about earth. They're about specifics, about form, about stability, about expression, about explicitness. So then what exactly are these subcategories, if that's the case? Well, this is interesting. They express the modes within each element. As I said earlier, the elements in reality never occur in isolation in terms of expression. In principle, they do. We can talk about this creative formula that always includes these four principles. But in terms of looking at the way real-world experience happens, these elements will tend to be present in combinations with various aspects to the forefront, various aspects to the back, the recessive, and so on. And that's what these cards express. So the knights express fire, the queens express water, the princes express air, the princesses express earth. If you'll notice in Crowley's rendering, the knights all are shown on horseback, or at least with a horse, to indicate their power, their authority, their forcefulness. And the princes are all shown in chariots, to indicate the principle of air is one of mobility, one of expansion, one of not being stuck, one of not being stable. So, the knight's the principle of fire. So the Knight of Wands, again, the Knight of Wands is about wands, it's about fire. The fact that it's a knight is just a little sub-flavoring of it. So this card is essentially pure fire, because it is the fiery part of fire. It is pure creative impulse. Absolutely no concern whatsoever with what is being created or how it's being created. It is absolute purity, absolute essence, absolute radiance at its source. I mean, this card is could be said to be the Big Bang. It's just pure force shining forth. Then the Queen of Wands, we have the watery part of fire. So again, it's a wand, so it's about fire, it's about creativity, it's about radiance. But the watery portion would be that portion of creativity which contains within it the essence of moving into expression, of moving into otherness. It's not a pure, an absolutely pure, absolutely pristine creativity like we see in the night. And as we've talked about before, fire and water are complementary but very different elements, and there's a certain antagonism there. So there's a contradiction in this card, there's a contradiction in this energy. Of course, fire dominates because it is a wand. Always remember the suit dominates in the card cards. Actually in the card cards and the number cards, but in the card cards especially. It can be confusing because it's a suit against a suit, and you can sort of think of giving them equal weight, but that's not at all the case. The suit dominates. So the Queen of Wands is emphatically about fire, about creativity, but it has this contradictory tension in it of being involved with some kind of production, with some kind of expressiveness.
Is there always some conflict, unless it's whatever it is, the Knight of Fire and the Queen of Cups and the Prince of Air and Swords and so on?
Not necessarily, because some of the elements are more sympathetic with each other, and other elements are more contradictory.
Mm.
And conflict is probably not a good word. Tension is probably a better notion.
Tension, okay.
Kind of a dynamic tension, a slight cross-purposedness. Or you can think of it as an unresolved pull.
But in the Princess of whatever it is, discs,
Right.
there isn't that
No,
tension.
right.
It's just
Absolutely. It's pure earth. Princess of Discs, pure earth. Prince of Swords, pure air.
Yeah.
Queen of Cups, pure water. Knight of Wands, pure fire. So there's no tension there at all. But at the same, for that reason, those are actually very unbalanced principles, because they're very unreal world.
Yeah.
You know, fire does not actually exist alone. So the Knight of Wands is a very extreme card. It's very extreme. You will rarely encounter it as an actuality, and when you do encounter it, it itself will be kind of unbalanced by the very fact of its not being tempered with other elements, which are intrinsically always present. So it's very interesting.
So with the Queen of Wands, I'm having a hard time seeing the tension. To me, it's looking a little bit more like just a change of form. You know, you're taking the one.
Yeah, you can think of it that way. It's a denser version of fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can look at the elements in terms of density in a certain sense. In fact, in Kabbalah they do that very specifically. In Kabbalah they say there's 4 worlds, and the worlds correspond to fire, water, air, earth in that order. And fire is the pure realm, the absolute pristine realm of just principle, of just essence, and it is untainted and unblocked and unmarred by complication. It's like you might say it's the divine realm or something, the angelic realm. And then you come into the world of water, the realm of water, which is secondary. Things are more complicated because things are moving more, they're getting denser. The substance is becoming more of an issue. The medium is becoming more of an issue. In the realm of fire, it's just pure essence. There's no concern whatsoever with the medium. When you get into the realm of water, things are denser. All of a sudden, the medium becomes a factor, so the fire is still. The principle of fire is still shining, but it has to shine through in a medium, and all of a sudden that raises issues. And then you get into air, and things are even more complicated because things are murkier, there's all these possibilities, there's all of this confusion floating around. And then you get into earth, and it's the densest, most solid realm of all, and the most confusing from the point of view of fire. Fire is absolutely pure, it's just pure radiance. And since there's no issue of medium or expression, these issues don't even arise. So from the point of view of Kabbalah, the essence of reality, your essence is fire. And if you can get, from the point of view of Kabbalah, when you get to fire, you realize your divine nature. And the other elements are confusing aspects of the complications of fire in its actual expression. So correspondingly, as you move down the cards within each suit, you're going down through the 4 worlds within each suit. So within fire, you're looking at the fire realm, the water realm, the air realm, and the earth realm, and there is a progressive density, a progressive involvement with the medium, rather than just with the pure essence. So the queen is this primal radiance that is all of a sudden, there's a medium here. Wow, interesting. What's going to happen? How's that going to work? Very interesting situation. It's not just a shining force; it's a shining force within something. And then you get to the Prince of Wands, and that addresses that very same question. Well, okay, let's look into this. Let's explore these possibilities. So once you have the shining forth within the medium, what are the options? Where can this go? How can this work out? What are the possibilities here? And so it moves into all these. But still, it is fire. Remember, it's a suit of wands, so it is still the primal radiance. But it's the primal radiance looking at itself in the context of possibility, in the context of meaning. And then we get to the princess, which is the earthy portion of fire. It is one, so fire dominates. It's about radiance, creativity. But it's radiance and creativity in the context of, the possibility that this could actually be something. This could express something specific. This could somehow be embodied in particularities. Now, in terms of the 4 worlds, one thing you'll notice is we could have these cards lined up 16 cards in a row, starting with the Knight of Wands and ending with the Princess of Discs. So you could think of the Princess of Wands. You can think of the subsequent card as being the Knight of Cups. Because we're moving downwards from pure essence into the medium of form, into the medium of expression.
So we're going from abstract to defined.
Yes. Although it's not literally abstract. In common parlance it would be said from abstract to defined. But
it's actually possibility.
It's unspecified into specified, but it's unspecified actuality into specified actuality. It's it's obviously some fine points in there. So, looking at the sequence as we move from the Princess of Wands to the Knight of Cups, the realm of fire has gone as far as it can go and still remain fire. It has to drop from its orientation of primal radiance, of primal essence, to develop any further. And it does that by going to the extreme of water, the fiery principle of water. So, again, of course, this is cups, so all 4 cups are about cups. It's about water. It's about the principle of otherness, of embodiment, of a medium, of a possibility of expression. So the fiery part of that is the creativity of expression, the creativity of embodiment, the urge to embodiment, the push or drive to embodiment. Fire is, above all, an active element. So all the knights signify an active principle. So this is, water is intrinsically passive, but since this is the fiery portion of water, it is the most active aspect of this essentially passive principle of medium, of embodiment.
So, I'm sorry, water is passive? Is what you
Yes.
said?
Fire is active, water is passive. And then air is somewhat active, and earth is somewhat passive. You could say fire is plus, water is minus, air is plus minus, earth is minus plus, or something. You want to do a Mendelian analysis. So, the Knight of Cups moves into the Queen of Cups. And here we have the watery part of water. Again, this is just pure water. This is pure medium, pure receptivity, pure passivity. It's not complicated by an admixture of elements, so it's just water itself. It is this principle of a medium, of otherness, of showing up as, the possibility of showing up as expression, as form, as some kind of a result or an output or an outcome. We get to the Prince of Cups, which is the airy part of water. Of course, it's about water, so it's still about this watery principle of medium, of form. But in the airy part, of course, we have the possibilities of form. We have the possibilities of expression. So again, there's an open-endedness to it. There's a dynamism. There's an ambiguity to it.
So this would be a less conflicted card than something like the Wands, because
Well, less, but
because
you know, you have to know, fire and water are a prime conflict. Air and earth are a prime conflict. Water and air is a lesser conflict. Fire and earth is a lesser conflict. Water and earth is a harmony. Fire and air is a harmony. If you draw that out in a cross, it makes sense. Like that's where we do a readout. The things that are across from each other are opposites, and the things that are diagonal to each other are harmonies or lesser opposites.
So you're saying water and earth are less?
Water and earth are harmony. Water and earth are very happy with each other because they're both about form and expression. Fire and air are very happy with each other because they're both about not being specific, not being concerned with result, not being concerned with form.
In a typical astrological interpretation, doesn't it look more like fire and air are harmonious, water and earth are harmonious?
Yeah, I think that's what I tried to just say.
Oh, you said fire and water are harmonious.
No, that's prime conflict.
Conflict. The prime conflict in the elements is fire and water.
Okay, okay. And the prime conflict with air is where?
Earth.
Is, oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And then air and water is a lesser conflict. Earth and fire is a lesser conflict. So the elements have a politics with each other. They have alliances. They have friends and enemies and ambiguous truces. And the nature of each of these cards this shows up in. So, for example, we're in cups now. The Knight of Cups is fire and water. Fire and water are antagonistic. So therefore, you'd expect this card to be a tension, to be a somewhat difficult quality. Water and water, of course, is a non-issue. There's no disharmony there. Now we're at the Prince of Cups, which is air and water, which is a lesser. It's a slight tension. It's a slight disharmony, but it's not too extreme as in the case of fire and water we see in the Knight of Cups. So in terms of the 4 cups, the 2 most difficult, if you wanted to carry, let's say the 2 cards that have the highest degree of tension in cups will be the Knight and the Prince. The Knight more so than the Prince. And the Queen and the Princess will not have any tension at all. They will be very harmonious. And that brings us to the Princess of Cups. It's about water, of course, but the earthy part of water, water is very happy. Water's goal, you could say, is to move into earth. Water wants to move into expression. That's its whole raison d'etre. So it's a very satisfied card of the medium dominating, of expression dominating, of output dominating.
That's sort of interesting, like, so with the wands, the most pure card is, well, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, it's undeterminate. It's a fire sign. The wands.
Yes.
The
That's,
Knight.
from a spiritual point of view, quote unquote,
Yeah.
the Knight of Wands is the purest card in the court cards.
Right. But then, so you have the Queen of Water, and that's sort of like a pure water. But in a way, the quality of water seems best, or seems happiest with the
Yes.
Prince.
Water wants to move down, so water is happy.
Yeah,
It's
so
down.
it's happy
Water
there.
does not want to be up, so it's at least happy up, and we see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
So the purist isn't necessarily the
Right.
happiest of what's a little
Right.
off kilter. It's a little
Right.
out of balance because it's so much of itself.
Well, water is intrinsically less pure than fire, is all.
Oh, I see what you're
So in terms of sort of an alignment, or saying a better card, is it better to be in harmony or aligned?
There's no better. There's
No,
no
I mean,
better
not
or
better.
worse.
Well, let's see.
It's a matter of degrees of
Just-
tension
Matter degree.
and implication. Each of these energies has a different implication.
Right.
So the implication of fire and of the Knight of Cups, it's setting a challenge. It's setting a challenge because there is a forcefulness, but at the same time there is a move, wanting to move into expression.
Right.
And so this is like setting a koan. It's setting a riddle.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I know
as
it's
it moves
not
down
better.
through the cards, the riddle works itself out, and the riddle is solved, and the answer to the riddle is found in the princess.
Right.
So this is the answer, this is the result, and it's a very happy occurrence because you've gotten to the end. You've gotten the answer.
So what is sort of the quality of the alignment, or what is the challenge? I mean, if cards are aligned, like water and water, or
Right.
air and air,
Right.
is that just sort of that it's embodying all the qualities of that element?
Well, there's no conflict.
No conflict.
Yeah. Or whatever conflict is intrinsic in the element itself.
Right.
But there's no additional conflict.
So what's the difference between element
It's a simple
and
condition.
what's the
So
difference
the
between...
fire of fire is a simple condition, water of water is a simple condition, air of air is a
Okay,
simple
that's-
condition. These
that's
conditions
what
are
it
more
is.
complex.
Simple. Then what about harmony? I mean, harmony versus alignment.
I'm not sure what you mean by alignment. Harmony is a matter of, we can define harmony as the opposite of tension. In that case, there's different degrees of tension in each card, and all the cards that are their own element are harmonious,
Okay.
because there's no outside tension being imposed. But there are other cards that are harmonious that do have sub-elements. And there are other cards that are unharmonious, or that are more tense,
Okay.
that have sub-elements.
So the Queen of Swords would be harmonious.
No, not at all, because water and air are
Oh,
tension.
conflicting. Oh, okay, yeah.
Because water wants to move down and air wants
Wants
to
to
be
expand.
up. Air wants to be open. Water is not, it's not as bad as a conflict as water and earth, because earth is specified and air does not want to be specified. It
Yeah.
wants to have possibilities. It wants to leave its options open, so to speak. Water wants to become earth, but it isn't that strong, so it's not that threatening to air.
Yeah.
It is threatening because it's a contrary tendency, but it doesn't have the weaponry that Earth has. Earth has the weaponry of specificity, which terrifies air. Air's worst nightmare is specificity. Air wants to be, don't pin me down, don't tie me down, don't expect an answer to your question. That's air. And Earth isn't an answer. No, it's this or it's that. Water would like an answer, but water hasn't gotten to that point yet. Water would like to be Earth.
Yeah.
And we see this symbolically in nature, the way water flows down to the ocean. Water wants to follow gravity.
So the harmonious trump in swords would be the knight, if at all.
The knight is harmonious, and the prince is harmonious. Because the prince is air of air, so there's
The
no
prince is there, yeah, right.
Yeah, and the knight is harmonious because fire and air are very happy with each other.
Yeah.
Fire excites the air, and the air enjoys being excited because it spurs it to more
Expansion.
exploration, more possibilities.
Yeah.
Fire, as you might say, splits the air up further. The air loves being split up. The air is all about being split up. The more you can split up the air, the happier it is. I mean, this is why the element, the symbol of air is swords, because swords divide. Swords takes single things and makes them multiple.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what air is all about. Air is all about multiplicity, possibility, expansion, moving into alternatives.
Why is the symbol for fire wands?
For several reasons. It's a phallic symbol, and also the tool for manipulating fires is basically a poker. And also, the wand symbolizes the radiance, a ray. Fire's mode is direct radiance. There's no wavering. There's no oscillation. Fire is a straight line.
So it's not a magician's wand.
Well, a magician's wand is a wand for the same reason that
Yeah.
for all of these.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
the ones that made in fire too.
Sure. All
So could you speak to the difference between the Cup of Wands and the Knight of Cups? Queen of Wands.
Queen of Wands and which, the other one?
And the Knight of Cups.
Knight of Cups. Okay. Well, the main difference is this is a fire card, so it's about radiance, and this is a water card, so it's about medium, it's about form, it's about expression. That's the main difference. This is the portion of the aspect of radiance that includes the notion of a medium of expression. And this is the portion of medium of expression that includes the notion of impetus, of forcefulness, of conception. So they're obviously both the confluence of fire and water, but this is that from fire's point of view, and this is that from water's point of view, and they have very different takes on things. Water's point, a lot of times I speak as if I'm personalizing these things, and that's a way of sort of poetically trying to communicate the sense of these things, because these things have very specific sort of flavors and sort of feeling tones that is intrinsic to their mode. And fire's mode is creativity, radiance, doesn't care about anything, it's completely amoral, it just wants to shine. No concern with what happens after the shining. It's just bang. That initial impetus is all. That's where it stops. It doesn't care after what happens after that. Whereas water is all about. Water does care very much. Water is all about wanting to take that and take it farther. Wanting to go farther. Wanting to go more into form, more into expression, more into actuality. So its take on things is very different. Water has a wanting. Fire has no wanting. Fire's wanting stops as soon as it is there. Just that initial fire is very, very, very real time. Water is much less real time. Water is concerned with the future, so to speak, concerned with result, concerned with outcome, concerned with process.
And potential?
Yeah. Well, water is potential. But it's potential in a dynamic sense of wanting to actualize its potential. It's not just a passive. It's not wholly a passive potential. Although it is that too. Yeah. It wants to flow, you could say, and it does flow. So we went through the Princess of Cups. The next card in our series, our hypothetical series, would be the Knight of Swords. So this is about air. So all the swords cards again are principally about air. This is the fiery portion of air. Fire and air are very harmonious elements. They're very happy with each other. So this card does not have a lot of tension. On the other hand, it has an enormous amount of activity, as you might imagine, because the natural volatility and dynamism and mobility of air is just energized and whipped into a frenzy by fire, which air loves. Air is completely happy with that, so there's no tension, but there's an awful lot of activity. So this is one of the most active cards in the court cards. So let me say, the most active card in the court cards.
So how would that
The most dynamic, let's say, the most dynamic card in the court cards. In the same sense that
as opposed to the Knight of Swords.
well, we're in the Knight of Swords now.
Oh, I mean the King of
Well, it is a king.
well, where am I?
Most
I thought you were talking about the
dynamic.
Prince,
Instead
talking
of the
about
Knight
the
of
King.
Wands.
So now we're at the Knight of Swords.
These are very interesting, these court cards. They're all very...
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
The elements, the relationship. I mean, the elements is this. You know,
This
the
is like
elements in
where
one
rubber
sense.
meets the road.
Yeah, in one sense, the element seems like a kind of an interesting, archaic notion, but these principles are very primal, and they show up across the world in all sorts of ancient traditions. You know, it shows up in American Indian tradition, it shows up in European tradition, it shows up in ancient Egypt, it shows up in, I mean, all the ancient traditions saw this same mandala, this same principle of activity in reality.
So if this,
So this is very very profound. This is very profound. There's a lot of implications to this.
if the Knight of Swords is the most active, would the Prince of Wands then be the next active, the air of fire versus the fire of air?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and you're meaning most dynamic in the sense of possibility as opposed to actuality.
Well, it's dynamic in the sense of moving, mobile,
I see.
unstable,
Volatility.
volatility, but an active volatility, not just a potential volatility.
So the Knight of Wands is potential rather than activity.
Yes, exactly so. The Knight of Wands is the potential to incite all activity, but it is not the activity itself. It's just that incitement. It's that inciting principle. It's the absolute core. It's the core event. It's just that instant of the Big Bang,
It's not going
which has a potential to do everything and anything, but it hasn't done it yet. It's too early on in the sequence, so to speak. Whereas by the time we've gotten to the Knight of Swords, it's gone through the medium of water, so it's dealt with medium, and now it's going even farther into really exploring the possibilities of medium. So basically the Knight of Wands has gone through all of these explorations of density, increased density and increased medium and increased otherness, and it's really spreading out and seeing what the possibilities are. It's really moving very dynamically into this new realm of expression of otherness. But at the point of the Knight of Wands, it's just starting. It's just that initial tick of creativity. It hasn't done anything yet.
As opposed to the Princess of Discs, which is like...
Yeah, which is the other extreme.
The other extreme.
Yeah. The Princess of Discs is the opposite card from the Knight of Wands.
Yeah.
The Princess of Discs could be said to be the ultimate result, in the same sense that the Knight of Wands could be said to be the ultimate cause.
So is the Knight of Wands like the Bindu? Like the initial...
Yes, exactly so.
Or Shiva.
Well, that's getting a little iffy, because you could say it is Shiva,
Creation.
but it's also the initial Shakti.
Huh.
Because
Combination.
in Shiva Shakti theory, Shiva's wholly inactive. Shiva would sort of be here, and then this would be the Parashakti, which is actually all dynamism. But that's getting into the subtleties of splitting hairs in a philosophy. So, Knight of Swords, very active, harmonious, but wildly unstable, wildly dynamic, and very happy to be so. Then we have the Queen of Swords. It's about swords, so it's about possibilities. It's the watery part. Water and air are a weak disharmony, so there's a certain amount of tension there. Water, you could say, wants to move downwards into form, and air does not want to move downwards. Air wants to stay up in the heady realms of possibility and unspecification. So there's a tension there. There's a pulling. Of course, air wins because it's about swords. Always remember the suit dominates, so it's about swords. It's about the possibilities. But there's this sort of nagging feeling of, well, gee, I knew what would happen if I moved down, which is contrary to the very spirit of air. So it's kind of a schizophrenia there.
So it's like steam and fog. I mean, steam would be the excited air.
Right.
And fog would be a sort of less a Queen of Swords. Maybe that's...
Yeah, you could say fog, in the sense that fog is kind of an oppression and a static dullness. Steam is a little too watery an element to fit in with the Knight of Swords has no water in it at all. So it's more like a brisk breeze on a perfectly sunny summer day kind of thing.
The Knight of Swords?
Yes. Because it's air excited by fire, but there's no hint of water. Whereas steam implies the steam is going to go into the air. I mean, we're splitting hairs
So
with our
the Knight of
metaphors.
Cups is steam. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Knight of Cups is steam. And the steam ultimately will come back out of the air and fall down.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Queen of Swords, we talked about that. It's the Prince of Swords, and this is air of air, so this is just pure air. It's pure dynamism, pure openness, pure unresolvedness, pure multiplicity, pure undefinedness, undeterminacy.
Is it less dynamic than the Knight?
Yes, but only slightly so, because the Knight is being specifically whipped into a frenzy, so it's having force put into it. So that's why this is the most dynamic card in the card cards. Because air...
Is it less, I mean, is the Prince more actual than Inception? Than the Knight would be more actual?
You could say very, very slightly more actual, but not much.
So the inception aspect of the possibility is still real. It's still.
Yeah, I mean the inception is here, and here is just motion. You might say that the air gets whipped into a frenzy in the night, and in the Queen it's like there's all this frenzy happening, and it wonders, well, gee, where's this going? Is this going to go into something? And then the air is sort of an aftermath of all of that as it sort of settles into just the wide open space that it occupies. So it's less dynamic than this, but it is very uncontained and very what's the word? Unweighted,
Differentiated.
well, it's very differentiated. And not in the sense of specified, but in the sense of
Air.
spread out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. So it's pure air. Air, as we said, is just, air is just open. It's all over the place. It's here, there, everywhere. It's not this or that. And then we get to the Prince of Discs. Princess of Discs, yes, thank you.
Of swords.
Of Swords, thank you. It's dizzying after a while. Try and do this. So here we have earth and air, so there's a lot of tension here. Earth and air is one of the primal disharmonies in the elements. So this card is a difficult card. The air wants to be up and open and unspecified, and the earth, on the contrary, wants to be down and locked in and very specified. Of course, air dominates because this is a sword card. Always remember that the number one rule in the card cards is the suit dominates. So it's always about the suit. So this is about air. But this is the conundrum that air has in the fact that there is specificity, which drives air nuts. If air had its way, the universe would just not be anything in particular. It would just be, be like deep sleep or something, no specificity at all. But air lives in a universe where there's three other elements, and Earth really is its nemesis, is its worst nightmare. It's like, oh my God, what do I do about this? There's specificity, but how do I handle this? And this card is asking that question. It doesn't answer the question, but it is asking it, and it has no answer. It's like, oh, this is impossible. This is inconceivable. This is hell. I want this openness, this just anything, and Earth is coming along saying no, not. So the last card we considered was the Princess of Swords, which is an extreme disharmony. Now we get to the next card in this series is Knight of Discs, Fire of Earth. Now, of course, this is just so Earth dominates. It's about form, it's about specificity, it's about actuality, it's about expression. The fiery aspect of Earth is an urge of a forcefulness of specificity, a forcefulness of expression, a forcefulness of stability. So this might be said to be a pushy Earth,
It's a bit like
an assertive
volcanic.
Earth. Yes, although volcanism,
Lava.
it's volcanic in the sense of the lava producing more earth, producing more matter. The dynamism of a volcano would be another element.
And that's tension, right? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Tension?
Yes. It's a weaker tension because fire and earth are a weak tension. Then next we have the Queen of Discs, which is water of earth. Water and earth are completely happy, perfectly harmonious elements, so this is a delightful energy. It's Earth moving more into itself. It's Earth becoming more earthy. It's Earth, because water's tendency is to wish to become Earth, and so this is water's idea of heaven. Great, finally I get to be Earth. So the Queen of Discs is a very harmonious energy of of moving into a very stable, comfortable, relaxed expression.
Does that imply fertility of Earth, or would that be Earth?
Very much so. Fertility, productivity, fecundity, the productivity of nature, the generosity of things moving in more solidly into form, kind of a cornucopia image.
So would that be a cornucopia card?
Sure. It's not a dead end. Like Earth of Earth is a dead end in a way, so Earth of Earth is not dynamic. Water of Earth is still very, very productive. It's like on the home stretch. The finish line is in sight, and it knows it's winning the race, and so it's very happy, and it's just surging forward. So this is a very productive, generative, card moving further into expression with exuberance and with fullness and with success. And then we get to the Prince of this, which is Heir of Earth. And again, air and earth are antagonistic elements, so this is a card of tension. It's about Earth, of course, since it's a disk. So it's about actual situations and expressions and things and so on and so forth, circumstances. Since it's air is about mobility, dynamism, exploring the possibilities. So this is an unstable kind of an Earth. It's an Earth that is shifting. It's an Earth that has some instability in it, some lack of solidity, some lack of persistence. It's liable to be falling apart or moving into something else or reshuffling itself. And Earth is not very happy at that. Earth doesn't like that at all. So this is a card of a good deal of tension.
So when you talk about tension, is air of earth as much tension, same kind of tension as earth of air?
Yes.
It is. Oh.
Yeah. The elements sort of work together or pull in different directions. It's a good way to think of it. And earth and air are pulling in really a different direction.
Right.
Earth wants to go there.
So it really doesn't matter which element is above or below.
In terms of the tension, no. In terms of the flavor, in terms of the sort of outcome, yes. Because earth of air is going to be about mobility. Air of earth is going to be about stability.
Gotcha.
Because one is about air, one is about earth.
Okay.
But it's the same flavor of tension, but the expression is very different. That's always the cardinal rule. Just keep remembering is that with the card cards, the suit dominates. It's about the element of the suit, and then the element, the sub-element that is imposing by the personage, is just like a flavoring, a spice. But the actual principle is about the. So we get to the last card in this series, which is the Princess of Discs. This is like the end of the line. This is the final station, everybody off the train. Things cannot go any further into expression. This is absolute stability, absolute expression, absolute inertness, arriving at an end result that is completely final, completely stable, completely expressed, completely specified.